What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to be showing you how to rebuild a seized rear brake caliper off this 1992 XJ600 Seca II. I've already got the caliper off, but that's the least of your concerns if you're taking on this job. The caliper was so seized that whenever I pushed this bike around when the transmission was in neutral, it would hardly roll. It would sometimes even drag the rear tire while I pushed it along. So I pulled the caliper off and wouldn't you know, the bike rolls real easy. But you still need a rear brake, so I've ordered some parts from eBay. So I'm really hoping they fit and work and do the job, because buying a new caliper for this bike isn't really an option because everything else that's available used is just as old and just as garbage. So hopefully we can take our garbage, clean it up, freshen it up, and put it back on the bike and make it not garbage. So let's get into it. A lot of work on the bench today. So we got our caliper and caliper kit disassembled here. The caliper rebuild kit came from bikecrafters.com. Looks all right. Got the pistons out. This was a heck of a time to get these out. You can see I had put some marks in them from grabbing them. Essentially, they were so seized in the caliper, you couldn't do the regular trick of applying compressed air to the fluid inlet here and forcing them out with air. So I had to get a torch, heat them up, loosen up the seal, spray some penetrant in there, and then grab the tips of the pistons with some channel locks and wiggle them free. Once I got them wiggled, I could use some air and push them out. So that worked, but once I got them out, there was a ton of corrosion inside these seal surfaces here, so I used a scraper and cleaned them up. I'm still gonna go over them once more to make sure they're extra clean. But this is what we're starting with. It's nothing special. It's already been taken apart, so I'll get into that now and I'll show you how we're putting this back together. Okay, so after reading Brake Crafter's version of instructions, which isn't really instructions, more just a guide, here's what we're gonna do. The whole thing is clean inside here, and we've got our new seals right here, and we've got this brake parts lubricant. They gave you like a dollop. Basically, I'm gonna get in there with my finger and coat up the rings. You've got two different thicknesses. Down deep in here, you've got a thicker groove, and out here, you've got a thinner groove. And traditionally on brakes, this is like your fluid seal and this is your dust seal. On a car, you'd have like a boot that would seal around the piston here, but we don't have a boot type thing here. This is your piston. You can only use it if it has like a smooth surface here. I know I put some marring into the top edge, but that doesn't sit all the way down into the piston. It doesn't sink that far down, so it won't engage the seals and tear them up. But if you do have like the chrome finish coming off here, you need to replace them. Or if there's warping or heat marks or, I don't know, damage from removal, these have to be replaced. Cleanliness is next to godliness when doing jobs like this. You have to maintain a clean surface, so that's why I'm gonna put my seals on a nice clean spot right here. My pistons are already cleaned, my gloves are clean, everything's clean as it can be. I'm gonna start lubing it up. Alright, so now we got the seals lubricated. I'm gonna put the bigger one and the deeper one in first and try and just sneak it in there. You really don't want to bend and warp them because you wouldn't want to like kink the seal, but I'm hoping it'll just roll in big. Alright, now with our caliper halves reassembled, we need to put the two halves together. And of course, because fluid needs to get from one half to the other because it comes in on this side and leaves on this side, it has a little port here that connects up to this over here, and you have a little gasket or O-ring that goes between the two of them. I lubed it up just to be safe, make sure that it doesn't seep dry and cause some issues. The piston's pushed in really good. This should be easy. I've already wire wheeled the mating surfaces here, so there should be no debris basically between these two surfaces. And give them one last quick wipe down. Basically, these things are machined parallel, and if they're not, you got a big problem. And yeah, I tried to find the torque specs for these two bolts that hold the halves together, but even in the Haynes manual, it didn't have a torque spec, so you know, tight is tight. Now we could put the pads in it and get it ready to go back on the bike. Before we put it back on the bike, I'm gonna bleed out the master cylinder of any of the old brake fluid that was in there, because why would we want to put old manky brake fluid through our freshly cleaned caliper? So I'm gonna clean out the master cylinder and I'll show you how we do that in just a sec. So this is the rear brake here, and the master cylinder reservoir hides right up in here. And to get to that, you have to take off this whole silly rear plastic thing, which means you have to take off these rear handles, this rear door thing, to get this whole plastic junk off. Turns out I only had to take the right side plastics off to get to the master cylinder here. Now that we're here, gonna use a Phillips to take that off so I can move the reservoir just a little bit more accessible out here. Gonna take all of the old fluid out of this and then put in some new fluid and start pumping it through the line out here and just collect it in a bottle so I can recycle it. But basically fill the lines full of new fluid, get any junk out, and get this thing prepped for its new caliper. Let's go. All right, so now it's time to put our caliper onto our rear brake bracket here. You gotta line up your banjo bolt, which is this funny thing with the cross-drilled hole and the two crush washers. These crush washers are not supposed to be reused. They're copper, and once they're crushed, they don't crush again. So I've got my hose held up out of the way so it doesn't drip all over me. I'm gonna get the caliper on first, and then I'm going to put on the hose line. Now it's time to bleed the brakes. I've got the master cylinder cap just cocked to the side so I can let some air in, but it has fluid just about halfway up here. I'm gonna pump the brake pedal, push fluid out here, and then when I pressurize the system, I'll open my wrench, let fluid flow out my tube into my container, and then I'll close the wrench, lift the pedal, repeat. Let's get it. All right, we're gonna continue bleeding. We're bleeding this backside nipple now. So essentially this front side nipple bleeds the outboard caliper piston, and the inner board bleeds the inside piston volume of fluid and air. And look at this, if you spin the tire, you can actually stop it. Wow, and it doesn't even drag. That's pretty incredible to me. A big success from this eBay super cheap caliper rebuild. Couldn't be happier. So that's a wrap on the rear brake rebuild on this 92 XJ600 Seca II. I'd say it's a great success. This was such a pain to deal with, pushing the bike around. It feels so much better just to be able to roll the bike around, not have to worry about a dragging brake, and have a working brake. It feels pretty luxurious. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you're enjoying this series. Please smash the like and subscribe button down below. And as always, have a good day.